All right. Thank you, everyone, for taking time to attend my session today. So my name is Keerthi Nagothu, and I'm a cybersecurity professional based out of Vancouver, Canada. I worked with consulting firms before my current role as security lead at Ballard Power Systems. I specialize in cybersecurity strategy, cyber incident response, and developing security initiatives. I have a passion for implementing security frameworks and bringing balance between security and operations. I have recently started a LinkedIn Conversations, which is a thought in cyber, to share thoughts, perspectives, and cybersecurity. I'm also part of VISA's Western Canada affiliate, which is recently started in March 2021. Outside of work, you would see me strolling in Stanley Park or playing badminton or trying any extreme sports if I'm traveling. So let's look at the agenda for today. All right, so we would be touch basing on recent cyber supply chain attacks that happened, and looking at what exactly cyber supply chain risk management mean. What are the recent challenges or the challenges that have been plaguing industry or firms with regards to CSRM, and how do you build a cyber supply chain risk management program? And based on the content that we discussed in the first half of the presentation, I would relate it to a case study which was carried out by NIST. And this is an actual case study that is being carried out by NIST in their initiatives from 2015, 2019, and also now. Finally, the concluding thoughts with regards to where are we foreseeing CSRM to be. So what's the big picture here we're dealing with? So globalization, outsourcing, and digitization had made organizations rely on a number of suppliers to support their functions. And suppliers have become essential link to run businesses. A compromise on one of the links through a cyber attack can have a disastrous impact on the business. As quoted from NIST IR 8276, an incident response threat report published in April 2019 by Carbon Black highlighted the use of island hopping by 50% of the attacks. So, what is island hopping? So, island hopping is an attack that focuses on impacting not only the victim, but its customers and partners, especially if these partners have network interconnections. So, organizations have no longer protect themselves by simply securing their own organization, because electronic parameter is no longer meaningful. Threat actors intentionally target the suppliers of more cyber mature organizations to take advantage of the weakest link. Organizations have been working to address this challenge for some time, but many still struggle with recognizing the challenge, deciding how to deal with it, and getting started. CSRM, or Cyber Supply Chain Risk Management, is an overarching function that includes concepts such as third-party risk management as well as external dependency management. So you have an extract from NIST report right on the slides that you're looking at. So what you're seeing on this slide is a report from NIST, which is European Union Agency for Cybersecurity, that was published in July 2021. The report presents an analysis of cyber supply chain attacks from January 2020 to early July 2021. The analysis focuses on publicly known supply chain attacks. If you look at the slide, the year is 2021, and the impact is, in some of the cases, it's global. And the attributed group, if you could famously recognize, one of them is Rebel. So Rebel went offline or anonymous after Kaseya attack, and they were back on September 8th or 9th of this year. And a couple of days back, I guess, they went again anonymous. So what do we expect from all of this is that supply chain attacks are going to happen more, and we can expect more of these going forward. Also, what makes this interesting is that a supply chain attack is a combination of at least two attacks. The first attack is on the supplier that is then used to attack the target to gain access to its assets. The target can be the final customer or another supplier. Therefore, for an attack to be classified as a supply chain one, both supplier and customer have to be the targets. So this is another extract from an NIST report, the same report I was referring to earlier. The report answers to the questions such as, what are the most common attack techniques being used in supply chain attacks? What are the main customer assets that attackers are after, and which is the relationship between attacks and the assets targeted? Timeline of supply chain attacks reported from January 2020 and July 2021. The month indicated in the figure refers to the month the incident was reported and not when the attack happened. So from the report analysis, it was clear that most of the attack techniques used to compromise supplier are unknown, followed by exploiting software vulnerabilities. In terms of supplier assets being targeted, most attacks aim to compromise code and data, as well as processes. So the compromised supplier assets are used as an attack vector to compromise the customers. And those attacks are mostly done by abusing the trust of the customer and the supplier, or by using malware. Independent of the technique used, most supply chain attacks aim at gaining access to customer data, key people, and financial resources. So what exactly is cyber supply chain risk management? So let me quote something from NIST standard publication 800-161. What does security, integrity, quality, and resilience mean in supply chain context? So security provides the CIA triad, confidentiality, integrity, and availability of information that describes the supply chain and that transverses the supply chain. So it's basically, when I say describes the supply chain, it means that information about the path of the product, both logical and physical. Traversing the supply chain, I meant by that is the intellectual property contained in the products and services itself. So what does integrity mean in supply chain risk management? The reason why I'm going through these terms a bit detailed is that we're going to see this in our case study where the customer focus was and where the supplier resources are based in. So integrity is focused on ensuring that products or services in the supply chain are genuine, unaltered, and that products and services will perform according to the supplier specifications and without any unwanted functionality, additional unwanted functionality. So what's resilience? Resilience is focused on ensuring that supply chain will provide required products and services under stress or failure. Quality is focused on reducing vulnerabilities that may limit the intended function of a component, lead to component failure, or provide opportunities for exploitation. Cyber supply chain risks cuts across different risk management functions. Again, underlining this piece because we will be talking that in the case study. Companies need to approach with a strategy that will enable them to manage these risks holistically on an enterprise-wide basis. From the discussion above, we noted that interaction is definitely necessary in cyberspace to create, modify, exchange, share information. Most of the time, software is built from ready-made components, such as proprietary code, open source components, and third-party APIs, which are application programming interfaces. It is common to come across an application that is not built on its own, but is built on reused software. The process of bringing a product from design through production looks simple from the outside, but a number of suppliers can own part of the process and their risks. Because of this complexity, sometimes we're unaware of where and how third-party risks can impact the organization. A simple example would be you're using a supplier and your supplier is using a sub-supplier which you're unaware of. If I give this from a SOC 2 type 2 context, it's mostly called as subservice organizations, if I can just bring in an analogy there. So one key question here is, what makes it special about supply chain attacks? What is it? So is that an organization can be vulnerable to a supply chain even when their own defenses are quite good. And therefore, attackers are trying to explore new potential highways to infiltrate them by moving to their suppliers and making a target out of them. So we have seen a lot of examples in the recent times, which is, if I can famously quote, is one is SolarWinds, and then we have Kaseya, and then we also had CodeCough, and number of attacks that we have seen in the earlier slide. So supply chain risks are associated with an organization's decreased visibility and understanding of how the technology that they acquire is developed, integrated, and deployed. They're also associated with the processes, procedures, and practices that assure the whole cyber supply chain risk management cycle, which is the integrity, security, resilience, and quality of the products. If you look at the threats and vulnerabilities, it's effectively managing cyber supply chain risks require a comprehensive view of threats and vulnerabilities. So threats can be adversarial, example, tampering, counterfeits, or non-adversarial, for example, poor quality natural disasters. Vulnerabilities may be internal, example, organizational procedures, or external, part of organizational supply chain. So, how do we face this challenge, or what is the solution to this challenge? Is basically approaching this by twofold process. One is internal to an organization, the other is external to an organization, and also looking at an holistic level, which is the holistic approach. So within the organization, there needs to be visibility and understanding of what our critical processes are, how they interact cross department wise, who are our suppliers, and what is the supplier role, and what's the impact in case of a compromise. It may sound simple when I'm talking about one supplier, two suppliers, but in the case study that we'll go through in the next half of the session, I'll just explain the risk profile of the company and the number of suppliers the company deals with. So at the supplier end, did we evaluate suppliers for the security process, such as governance, incident management, information protection, and did we include these details as part of contractual agreements? As we finalize our supplier, have we risk assessed against our organizational requirements? So the first primary question is, did we define our organizational requirements? How do our security requirements integrate with the suppliers? So this could give us a holistic approach of how well we can manage any supplier risks and impact on the organization. It's more of a proactive approach than a reactive approach. So coming to a very content heavy slide, which is the NIST focus areas, key practices and recommendations. I'm not going to read all the text that is there on your slides. I just put it across on the slide to make you understand what's the relation between focus areas, key practices and recommendations. So NIST focuses on focus areas, the four of them, foundational practices, which is basically intersection of information security and supply chain management. Existing supply chain and cybersecurity practices provide a foundation for building an effective risk management program. So enterprise-wide practices. So effective CSRM, again, is an enterprise-wide activity that involves each tier that we'll talk in the case study as well. Organizational level, mission or business process level, and information systems level, and is implemented through the system development lifecycle. And risk management processes. So CSRM should be implemented as part of overall risk management activities that involves identifying and assessing applicable risks and determining appropriate response actions, and implementation plan to document performance against that plan. I just want to make a note here that whatever the content that we are discussing today is already, it's nothing new. It's already there as part of your risk management process that you have in the organizations. It's something to deal with specifically with regards to CSRM program to be incorporated within. Again, all the content has been leveraged from the NIST website. So this is freely available documentation that is available on this website that you can refer to. The last one is critical systems. So cost-effective supply chain risk mitigation requires organizations to identify those systems or components that are most vulnerable and will cause the largest organizational impact if compromised. So, key practices published by NIST in February 2021 presented that you can implement a robust CSRM program or function at any organization of any size, scope, or complexity. These practices combine the information contained in existing industry resources, as I said, with the information gathered from 2015 and 2019 NIST initiatives. So NIST has been doing a lot of research in this area right from 2015 and before that as well in different means. But the extensive case studies or the case study that we discussed today would be from the initiatives that they have carried out from 2015. So the important aspect here is that we need to build a base, which is the focus areas, trying to identify where we are with regards to focus areas and relating the key practices to the focus areas. That is the eight of them that you're looking at right now. And also mapping it to the NIST recommendations. Let me say that it's not a one-to-one mapping that you're seeing from key practices to recommendations, because the recommendations are around 24 and what you're seeing on the screen right now are only few of them. So each key practice includes a number of recommendations that synthesize how these practices can be implemented from a people, process, and technology perspective. As I said, there could be 1:1 mapping, or there is no 1:1 mapping, and one key practice might have many recommendations that I'll just show you as a glimpse in the next slides. But however, like going forward, like it would be something like you build the base, you identify the key practices, you would also look at the recommendations that apply to your organization based on the size and the resources available to you. So if we look at a glimpse of how the key practices are mapped to recommendations, you have it here on the slide. Is basically on the left side you have recommendations, and on the top row you have the key practices. So the 8 key practices that we have looked in the previous slide are on the top row, and the next ones are basically telling us what they relate to. So for example, establish supply chain risk councils that include executives from across the organization. So that has been mapped to the key practice, integrate CSRM across the organization, then establishing a formal SCRM program, as they have been ticked there. So the last 2 columns are not checked off because the recommendations do not fall under that key practice. I have intentionally kept them there to show you the difference. So for the next few slides, whatever we have learned till now with regards to the content, although it was not very broad explaining how do you do it, but whatever the concepts that we have learned till now, we will use them to relate it to a case study that has been carried out by NIST on cyber supply chain risk management. As I have mentioned earlier, this is an actual case study, an actual company who has shared the best practices of CSRM that they have performed. And we will also identify the key themes that have been successful at that particular organization, and also add on put resources that you can leverage to implement CSRM program in your organization. So let's look at the case study itself. So the organization in discussion is named as ABC. I have intentionally redacted the name of the company here for our presentation, but it's available on this website that you can go and check it. So ABC is basically into designing and selling high performance IP network products and services worldwide. So they offer network infrastructure solutions such as IP routing, Ethernet switching, security, and application acceleration solutions. Just so the details are given just for you to understand the size of the company and operations that they have worldwide. And also the last one, the annual revenues. So the revenues are more than 4.6 billion. So let's look at the risk profile of ABC. So ABC relies principally on 5 contract manufacturers and original design manufacturers for all of its manufacturing, making supply chain essential in the whole of the process. So there are about 300 suppliers with more than 2,000 sites across the world that manufacture 24,000 parts used in ABC products. So I've just underlined two terms there, that is contract manufacturers and original design manufacturers. These are very specific to the industry that they are in and the product that they deliver. So that's the reason why I might say like CMs and ODMs in the case study discussion, just to keep it very small, and then discuss and refer to them, which is important because the way they do their cyber supply chain risk management program is very detailed, and the reason why you're seeing particular details is that about 300 other suppliers, 2,000 sites, because it's that big. So when I mention about doing a risk assessment process, probably for one supplier, it's very simple. But when we are talking about as huge as this, let's see how they do it. So the first key theme identified for ABC was organizational approach to SCRM. So when we discussed in the content before in the earlier session as well, we pointed out about holistic approach, having an organizational approach to CSRM. So all functions at ABC, all the functions that touch supply chain are linked through Supply Chain Risk Management Council, which meets on a regular basis to review risk exposure. The council is continually scrutinizing the overall risk environment, including inherent product risks, compliance risk, and what is needed to reduce those risks. The team also scrutinizes current activity and prioritizes areas that need attention. So the supply chain risk management team coordinates closely with other departments. To be underlined is the interdepartmental discussions. So the first one is corporate risk team, which is primarily responsible for the financial risk and insurance risk and a few other risks. Physical security team, which has responsibility for manufacturing and product security. So it's basically organizational approach, but decentralized execution. Supplier management team, which has a responsibility for sourcing strategies and maintaining close connections to the vendors. IT team, which addresses both the supplier IT security and supply chain cybersecurity. Quality team for component quality and manufacturing quality. So ideally for programs such as what is the business case for supply chain risk management for ABC? So if you look at what's the purpose, so why did the business have a particular interest in cyber supply chain risk management, is that so for them, it's basically supply chain risk management goes beyond logistics and on-time delivery. So the business case rests on a broader business base of product integrity, customer service, and corporate responsibility, of course. So ABC ensures that all components that go into systems have accountability and traceability. So these are the two key terms, which creates high confidence in component integrity. So we will see like how they have implemented these in their products as well as in the whole process. So key elements of supplier management program. So ABC supply chain risk management capabilities are built upon the foundation of a solid supplier relationship management program. So when I say solid supplier relationship management program is because relationship with suppliers are developed and strengthened through a number of program elements, including regular performance reviews, strategy alignment sessions, and performance metrics. Supplier risk management, ABC outsources, I think, 100% of its manufacturing, as I discussed in the risk profile, through top-tier contract manufacturers, the CMs and ODMs. About 90% of the suppliers are managed through a direct agreement. What does that mean? So they are selected using the sourcing strategies with the engagement of the engineering teams based on the requirements. So in reviewing suppliers for potential risk, they could pose to supply chain. However, ABC, also looks at percentage of risk and percentage of spend. So what do I mean by that? So a supplier may be as small as percentage of total spend, but critical enough to have a major impact on a product shipment. So that's very key. That is why every supplier gets vetted both in terms of dollars as well as criticality. So some of the key elements of the supplier management program include supply performance evaluation. So ABC has developed two primary tools. One is Supply Excellence Framework and Business Continuity Maturity Metrics, which I'll discuss in the next slides as well. Verification and audit. So ABC conducts on-site audits of its contract manufacturers and ODMs to assess and evaluate the performance. Certification. So each supplier must certify compliance with ABC code of conduct and requirements. Internal accountability. So employees at ABC recertify their understanding of compliance with ABC's code of conduct on an annual basis. Training. ABC employees with direct responsibility for supply chain management are trained in general risk management. Again, that's very key, trained. The company also is also planning to implement at the time of case study additional employee training, including, related to more requirements on standards. So as I mentioned, as part of the supplier management program, ABC has Supplier Excellence Framework. So when I say about a Supplier Excellence Framework, ABC has implemented a multi-point supplier framework to lead and measure supplier performance. So the wheel of supplier performance breaks down ABC's expectations of its suppliers into specific metrics, again, important for KRIs and KPIs, from leadership and management commitment to training and risk management. Prospective suppliers are vetted by a number of teams. So again, interdepartmental conversations, sourcing, risk management, engineering, and security, as you could see on the wheel. If suppliers cannot or do not want to meet the requirements, their scores are likely to drop. I apologize for the noise in the background. If suppliers cannot or do not want to meet the requirements, their scores are likely not high enough to allow them to participate because they have had the benchmark set. And the reason is that ABC deals with so many suppliers across the horizon, it's difficult for them not to have the standard baseline established. Once suppliers are accepted into the ABC supplier team, a team of security specialists, often located on-site, works with the team continually to strengthen brand integrity and address any gaps. That's again key. So if we look at business continuity maturity metrics, so ABC ranks and tracks performance, whether for its suppliers or itself, along a continuum towards, right, starting from basics till to world class. I'll show how they have arrived at that, a glimpse of it. For example, in the area of business continuity, ABC measures its suppliers in 4 areas that you're seeing on the screen. Management commitment to business BCP program, BCP readiness in production, selection and readiness of alternative locations, BCP program structure and documentation and training. So some of the key elements that ABT tests for include degree to which management is involved and committed in demonstrating world-class performance in BCP. When I'm using the term world-class, it's basically a term which is specifically used by ABC in their maturity metrics. How proactive is the supplier's planning versus just reacting when the crisis occurs? Are key players who could be called upon in a crisis identified, and do they know their individual roles during an event? So these are some of the key questions they're going to ask the suppliers to rank them in the maturity metrics. So if you look at a glimpse of how the business continuity maturity metrics has been carried out at ABC, you're seeing that right on the figure. So we have management commitment. Those are the dimensions that they're looking at. And then we have, different, that's basically the ranking. What are the basic? Are they driving basics? Are they mastering basics? Are they world-class suppliers? So if you could see the difference between driving basics, mastering basics, and world-class suppliers, it's basically no preparation to having an established and mature process. As an example, you could see management commitment. So in driving basically management is seeing the need for BCP preparation. But if you look at world-class column, you would see, pushes the limit of being proactive BCP through organization and before being requested by the customers. So that's how they kind of rank the suppliers for ABC specifically. So ABC understands that its suppliers often have to start out at a basic level and develop a strategy to become world class, because it's not overnight that they would become from basics to world class. And the maturity matrix kind of creates a common framework for understanding what world class means and how to move along the rows to achieve that. As I said before, the score is being done for every supplier as they are in driving basics or in world class. So supply chain continuity. So from a continuity point of view, ABC is continuously monitoring what is going on around the world on a 24/7 basis. It uses an outside vendor, and that's also an important part. So it uses an outside vendor to monitor global events, and visibility down the supply chain also enables ABC to identify and mitigate the risks of single source failed kind of choke points. The vendor maps ABC's entire bill of materials. So when I say bill of materials, it's all the products and materials and the components that are made by suppliers in their factories, and collects them that information in a central database. So the tool basically provides the data to assess risk at a component level, at a supplier level, location level, and financial level. So risk managers can see at any point in the time what the supply chain impact of disruption anywhere in the world would be. And that's very key, because they basically automated the process, and all they had to look is pull out the spreadsheet and look at how are suppliers doing it. Are the suppliers going above our risk threshold? Are our KPIs and KRIs being met? So supply chain security. So there are three drivers of ABC security strategy, like brand integrity rather than brand protection. So that's a very key term for this particular company, because brand integrity is proactive, where the more conventional brand protection strategies tend to be reactive. In conventional brand protection, for example, the focus would be on identifying and investigating counterfeit products and tracking down the problems. This approach does not address the root cause or conditions that allow that counterfeit to enter the marketplace in the first place. So, brand integrity requires lifecycle threat modeling, identifying and proactively addressing weak points from product development through production to shipping and warehousing. So it's more of a proactive approach than a reactive approach. Customer focus. So on behalf of its customer, ABC carefully manages and audits whether these products are authorized by the manufacturer, whether the suppliers contract only from authorized channels, the document of origin of the product, and who has touched the product in the whole distribution process, and if the legitimacy of the product has been confirmed with the manufacturer. The last one, the driver, is basically the life cycle approach. So when the design and production processes are largely invisible and finished boxes pop out, it is difficult to have a high level of certainty that nothing has been compromised or corrupted. So ABC kind of breaks the whole life cycle into smaller and more transparent pieces. So each of them are tested for potential weaknesses. This approach basically enables ABC to focus on how risks to product manufacturing is mitigated, rather than at the manufacturing site itself. So this is basically the software design and security. So software design and security, another key aspect with regards to how software design and security has been managed at ABC. So again, here the lifecycle approach is being carried out right from the product initiation to the product end of the life cycle, how the product is being rolled out into. And then the next one is the component integrity. As I mentioned earlier, the component is always tested for any faults or any errors that happen in the whole life cycle. Facility integrity is basically dealing with the physical and the transportation security associated with the manufacturing, onloading, offloading, and unloading of products. Shipping and warehousing, again, the chain in the process, how the product is being shipped, how the various checks are being made, and how they're being warehoused. Audit is basically having those resources to do specific audits or spot checks to do bring the product from initiation till the end of the life cycle. It is also said that ABC is training people on the floor to identify some of the audit mitigation activities or the risk mitigation activities identified as part of the audit to be careful, and also preparing them to how to do the audit in a right way to answer this. The next one is standards, and ABC basically has the list of standards that you're seeing right now. ISO are the ones that would specifically, like, you can realize that, okay, these are related to information security, quality, and environmental management. The last one, the CTPAT and AUO, are very sector specific because of the way the products are being manufactured at ABC. The reason why I made sure that I mentioned this particular standard here is I'll go through some of the additional resources that we have from NIST and try to show you like how these all relate together when you're selecting cyber supply chain standards. For example, selecting the right standard. So how do you choose your cyber supply chain standard? So selecting the right standard should be based on your business needs, overall risk management framework, and understanding your business, your sector, and customers. So when I say sector, we just saw like a sector specific kind of standard for ABC, and finding out your specific role and priorities in the supply chain. So why do we have multiple standards? So cyber supply chain risk management is a multidisciplinary problem or a challenge, and successfully addressing it requires blending practices from different organizational silos, industries, excuse me, and vocabularies as well. So how do you use the slide, right, that you're seeing to choose your own standard for your own organization? So there are 3 key questions. So the first one is, what cybersecurity standards and frameworks do you currently use? So that is basically the upper part of the roadmap to guide you. And then what is your industry or sector, which is like sector specific row that you could look into. And where do you want to focus with respect to supply chain risk management? So use the rows on the lower part of the map to mark by the large gray arrow. So each column in the figure starts with a source document. So if you do not currently use a framework, based on the size of your organization and the volume of business, you can start with NIST framework or a framework that fits your bill. Draw additional resources from other columns if you feel it's necessary. It's acceptable to use multiple documents because you want to augment your practices as demonstrated by many companies. So if you like to augment your current program with additional resources, you can use any of the relevant documents from any column. Again, this is like a NIST resource that you could see on the NIST website. So again, let's look at the concluding notes on this area. So one of the primary aspect of cyber supply chain risk management is basically that it's a huge program that needs to be incorporated with the risk management side of things. But the key aspect is it's based on the business case, it's based on the cost, and the resources are available to you. Based on that, you need to take a call with regards to how big the program is and how much investment are you going to make in each of the areas, people, process, and technology. And as I said, like, CSRM is an evolving discipline, and the threat environment has been very dynamic in the last couple of years. So few of them is basically looking at centralized risk management teams. As I said, the organizational approach would give you a more holistic picture, as well as having that decentralized execution within the departments. So keeping pace with technology change and evolving threats is key, because as I said, the key thing about supply chain attacks is that it attacks the customer, as well as exploiting the relationship between the customer and the supplier, and also the fact that attackers are attacking the suppliers to enter a cyber mature organization because they want to exploit the weak link. Other key aspect is that hiring, training, and retaining expertise. That is very key, because knowing the business of the organization as well as tailoring to the needs of the organization is very key. We cannot use all the frameworks because one size does not fit for everyone. So if somebody doesn't have an automated tool to manage suppliers, and they just have like two of them, an Excel spreadsheet would work. So it depends on the business case as well as the business that the organization is in. Again, the last key aspect, last but not the least, is understanding the return on investment. We cannot invest on tools which would not benefit us. If understanding the whole concept of cost benefit analysis. So NIST research basically concluded that CSRM, of course, is an evolving discipline. While varied practices exist at mature organizations, less mature organizations are still needed further practical guidance and methods for implementing and evolving programs and practices. So some of the resources that I have used from NIST are here that you can refer to. And thanks everyone for taking time to attend my session. I'll just open session for any questions now. Yeah, do let me know because I know we have 10 minutes of time. So any questions or thoughts that you would like to share? Thanks, Rob. Oh, thanks, Shelly. So I have a question from Vivek. So it's, do you see organizations focusing only on parts of the supply chain risk directly related to delivery, integrity of product, and not on the vulnerabilities in the borrowed code, long-term sustainable? That's right. So I think most of the organizations, like big organizations, which did not have a hold on their suppliers with regards to visibility into what code is being used, is it proprietary or open source, they're facing problems with that because there could be an errors in codes that just come into your organization without any notice. So it's basically organizations are looking things from supply chain perspectives in silos because the supply chain program has to be to a level of maturity which it has not been yet. So Gloria, that's a good question. So I think for me, like with the boundary or the scope of the discussion that I'm associated with, I guess the legal contracts. So there are a lot of discussions that are going on in industry with regards to what should be the supplier obligations in case of an incident response, and then how much time they need to respond, and various other elements of legal terms. I cannot speak on the legal aspects to it, but it's time that we have conversations with interdepartments as extensively as possible, whether it's with legal department or whether it's with supply chain team, because that integration is missing. That's what is causing that much gap in the whole supply chain environment. It's because, okay, we are saying that the supplier has to inform us, but the question is, where is it written? So is it in the agreement? Is it in the contract? Isn't it the time to like update the legal contracts to help you aid in the process of risk management process? So one of the key terms, maybe I missed to mention, but yeah, the contracts and the agreements that you have with suppliers is very key. Yeah, so that's a good question, Vivek. So the question is, how many layers deep does the supply evaluation go? Example, the supplier to primary supplier or further along the chain. So I'll give you two perspectives. So first one is, let's say you have 10 suppliers, and out of them, there's just one supplier that's key to you. And that one supplier basically uses sub-suppliers, right? Sub-supplier, sub-service organizations. Let's say the chain is too long. If it's critical to you, that basically determines the business for you, like the business continuity of your organization. In terms of sometimes it could be as simple as supplying microcontrollers for an organization who's doing in the manufacturing. So how important is a supplier? And it's necessary that you go into that depth. And I can relate this to actual compliance, which is SOC 2 Type 2 report. So if you look at the standard from SSAE 16 to SSAE 18, there wasn't a specific mention of subservice organizations controls in SSAE 16, the SOC report standard. But if you look at the SSAE 18, it has specifically asked to look at the sub-suppliers controls. So when you don't have a SOC report like an assurance from the supplier, you definitely need to go into the depths of, who are the sub-suppliers. Most of the cases, it's mostly like, a supplier, sub-supplier, and there is a third one, sub-sub-supplier. So it might sound tedious at this point, but it again depends on your criticality of the process or the program that the supplier is involved with your business. Yeah, so yeah, that basically answers the question as well. So that's how we do the risk management aspect, right? So what we are seeing is a gap because we're not able to relate the business risk, and aid in the risk management process because we overlook that whole supply chain area because I have not considered the scenario where it's a risk to my customer, right? So as a supplier, so if I am using a product, I should be aware of what I am using. What controls do I have in place? It's as simple as having a AWS or a Azure product or any other cloud service product that you use. Have you configured it from your end? What are the controls that you made sure that there is no unauthorized access that is being given um, to the adversaries or attackers or to any maybe an accidental disclosure of information. So you have to always look at it like from a supplier. So from a customer point of, let's say I'm getting, I'm giving a service to a customer. So has that been defined? Again, agreements, what service I'm providing, how is it? I wouldn't be looking at how critical is my product to them, but I would be looking what products am I using for my organization. Hope I made sense. It's a little confusing when I talk about customer and supplier, but yeah. As I said again, if there are no questions right now in your mind, or if you don't want to ask here, you can always reach out to me on LinkedIn. It's by name, Keerthi N. I'm there, and I'm based out of Vancouver. So yeah, feel free to reach out for any questions or queries.